Hello everybody, it's Julia here. So this is my second attempt at recording this video. The first time I realised I hadn't turned my Wi-Fi and everything off, so my phone was doing all sorts of things. Anyway, this is a VR to Simon at the Hermit's Cave, and this is hashtag Tarot Tubers A to Z Evolution. And I had a suspicion in my head that I may have done this the last time around. And so I looked back through my VRs, and the last time that I did this was May 2023. So I did watch a little bit of that, and it was actually half uncomfortable and half funny to look at myself, really, almost 3 years ago, really. I was not nearly as confident, I suppose, on camera. Not that I am particularly now, but I do find it easier to speak and look at myself, you know, in the camera. But yeah, I think the prompts were slightly different then as well. But anyway, without further ado, this is to get to know your tarot tubers. So I really wanted to jump in. I enjoyed listening to Simon, and actually a lot of what he said really resonated with me. So yeah. So there's obviously a prompt for every letter of the alphabet, beginning with A, which is awakening, and this is what sparked your spiritual or tarot awakening. Well, for me, I'd always been quite a sensitive child. I'd always seen and heard and felt things that maybe other people didn't, things I didn't quite have a word for or any ability to kind of articulate, I suppose, at that time. And I'd always been very, very interested in anything kind of mysterious or esoteric. I was very sensitive. I used to have to sleep with the light on as a child because I would see things flying around my ceiling and just all sorts of things, really. But I suppose my real awakening was quite sudden, actually, because at age 17 I had a friend called Sarah, and her mum read tarot cards, and one day she had some cards on the table, and she just said, you know, come and look at these. What do you think? What are they saying? And I looked at them and went, meh, 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 meh. And she looked at me like, wow. And she said, you should learn. And so she gave me a tarot deck, and I started to learn. And, you know, tarot cards have been in and out of my life ever since, because there's times in your life where you're just getting on with life, you know, you don't really have the time or the energy to sit and reflect, because tarot is a very reflective process for me. And so there were times when they were a bigger feature of my life than others, but they've been fairly constant since I was 17. And after that, I started to learn all sorts of things. I started to learn about Buddhism, paganism, chakras, auras. Do you know what I mean? All sorts of things. I used to look at the I Ching, runes. I'm not so interested in things like that anymore, but tarot has endured and has my interest, I guess, in psychic phenomena. And you know, I still see auras around people. I still see spirits on quite a regular basis. And I have, you know, my beliefs in the spiritual world have evolved over time, I guess. And a big feature, actually, of my learning was when I was, 21, and I trained to be a mental health nurse, and I learnt about Carl Jung, and he just blew me away, really, because before that I'd been learning about Freud, who is not really, what's the word? God, the word's not coming to me. He's very patriarchal, isn't he? He's not very interested in the spirit world. He's got some he had some quite negative attitudes and views about women, which I guess was something of its time. But Carl Jung was just so refreshing. You know, he coined the term the collective unconscious. He was interested in archetypes. He did a lot of dream interpretation and analysis, and he really had a very different way of looking at people's psychological problems. And so I was just fascinated with that whole thing, really. So yeah, I've already taken up too much time, haven't I? So B is beliefs. What core beliefs guide your practice? I guess really these days it's probably and I have got some notes in front of me, so I am looking at those because there was a lot here to remember. It's really that tarot is merely a mirror of my own state of mind, often for me, that the cards are archetypes, they're typical of everyone's experience, and I think that particularly when you're reading for other people, you're discussing things that are relevant to all of us. So you know, the minor arcana are things that represent our everyday life, whereas the majors are more esoteric and bigger, more profound things. But I think that it's important to remember that many of the things that tarot discuss are common to us all, and that you can sit and do a collective reading and it will resonate with people because these are common experiences. I do occasionally get what feels like downloads, where information comes into my mind, where I do feel I've connected with someone or something and things come to me. But that doesn't happen every time I pick my cards up. And so yeah, I don't know whether I've answered the question there. That's about my tarot practice, I guess. But yeah. C, what tarot or oracle deck do you feel most connected to right now? Well, it's this one, the shadows we cast. I'm not going to show you the cards on camera because I'm not very good at talking and doing things. It always goes wrong. But this is the Kickstarter that I received recently by Nikki Ferrada, and it was not supposed to be a deck study for this month, but it has become so. I've been reading with it every day, pulling cards every day. I did a little hashtag video with it a couple of days ago, and everything I've done with this deck has just blown my mind, really. It's the guidebook is amazing, but I'm reading it at the moment because I want to learn Nikki's perspective and why she created the cards as she did. But my intuition is picking up loads from these cards. So yeah. Daily practice. What is my daily spiritual routine? Well, again, that changes. It's not kind of fixed all the time, but I generally get up and I pull a card for the day. Sometimes I don't even look at it till the evening. Sometimes I pull 3 cards. It really depends what's going on, but sometimes I sit and reflect on them, think about them as I pull them. Sometimes I don't look at them again until the evening. Ooh, can you hear that? That's my postman. Made me jump. So yeah, when I do sit down to reflect on my cards or look at them, I always light a candle. I like my Palo Santo very much. I always have some of that on my table. I look at my daily astrology. I bought the this from the Oneness Emporium, and it just tells you where the moon is, and it tells you some of the major sort of planetary transits and bits and pieces for the day. So I will look at that. But yeah, that's probably about it. I guess. E is for evolution. How has my practice evolved over time? Well, it's, I guess, like Simon said, really. When I first started to read tarot cards, I think I wanted to predict things. I felt like I wanted to be able to tell people what to do, or what was going to happen, or what might happen in the future. But I soon realised over time that that's not a very helpful thing for people, and it was a kind of immature aspect of my own journey, I suppose, really. And I really realised over time that my cards, like Simon said, are a mirror. They reflect my own, or the person I'm reading for. It reflects their state of mind, and so my practice became much more reflective for myself and for others. I like to use cards for problem solving, for just looking at different options, different possibilities. Lots and lots of shadow work. I don't read reversals, as Simon said. I never have done, actually. I find that depending on where different cards lay in a spread will depend on how I read them. You know, the cards are all talking to each other, aren't they? And so sometimes you might read a card in a positive way, and sometimes in a more negative way. It depends on the other cards around it, the question. It depends on lots and lots of different things. So yeah, it's, as I said, it started out as divination more than anything. I used to like to use pendulums and all sorts of things, and these days I really just don't do any of that. I like to just ask questions and just see what comes up, see what possibilities and opportunities there are, and then I will start to look for little signs in my everyday life, little omens, little coincidences, little synchronicities. But if I'm reading for somebody else, I very much like it to be therapeutic if I can. And I like, if I was in the same way as if I was sitting and doing some counselling with somebody, I like for people to answer their own questions. You know, I can put certain things out there which should make that person reflect and think and come up with their own answers, as I said. So F is favourite, and that's my favourite all-time deck. And why? Well, you know what this is going to be. It is the Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Torian, and again, I'm not going to show you the cards. You've all seen this deck. It just has everything, and I'm still amazed that it's a deck that's not colourful, you know, but it doesn't need it. It's a very emotional deck, and I connected with it immediately. I love the thing that I love the most about it is that through the court cards, because court cards are particularly difficult to read, aren't they, often? but through the courts there is a journey, and you can really see and feel that progression from the page through to the king, and I really like that about the deck. Guides. Do you work with guides, ancestors, or your higher self? Well, I don't have a structured sort of practice around guides or ancestors. I light candles to various deities throughout the year. You know, I follow the wheel of the year. At the moment, my altar's set up for Ostara. So I will, out of my goddess oracle deck, I will take Ostara out. I will take out various cards to do with moon cycles. You know, any oracle cards or cards that I've got to do with spring, I will put on my altar. I bring in flowers and plants and stones and things from the garden, and they go on my altar also. So I certainly have a dialogue with certain guides, but when I sit down to read cards, it's not as if I'm actually trying to speak to anyone in particular in terms of guides. I've always had a bit of a thing for Nematona, which you don't hear about her very often, but she was a Celtic goddess of sacred spaces and sacred groves, and I love forests and trees, and I do feel quite connected to her when I'm out, which is not very often that I'm actually out in the woods or the forest, but I do enjoy that. Ancestor work is not something I've hugely gotten into so far, but perhaps that will come. And I do honestly feel that I'm talking to my higher self at all times. You know, like I said, sometimes I feel like that I have these kind of downloads where I know it's not my thought processes as such, it's something else. That could be my guides, could be spirit guides, could be my higher self. I'm not really sure. I don't think it really matters, so long as you kind of are aware of it and honour it and are respectful of that dialogue as it comes. But I do feel like my higher self is in communication with me at all times, really, through my intuition, through my gut feelings, through, like I said, the little signs and synchronicities that I see around me. I feel like this is an active force in my life. H is, how has tarot or spirituality supported my healing? Well, I can't tell you how many times I feel like tarot has saved me, if you like. You know, times where I've been lost and I've needed direction, where I haven't known what's next and it's made me feel very anxious. Like Simon said, actually, I think if you suffer with a lot of anxiety, it's because you're often trying to control things around you. You're trying to control yourself, you're trying to control other people sometimes, your environment, just what life throws at you. And of course you can't control any of those things. Anxiety is such a cruel thing, actually, if you really do suffer with it. You know, it's like you're always trying to project yourself into the future and predict the future, which is impossible, isn't it? And I think that my tarot cards and my small little practices that I have every day do help to keep me grounded, can stop that anxiety cycle, and can keep me feeling hopeful about the future, especially when I do feel very lost. In 2020, was the last time, I suppose, that I had a really big well, it just, life was awful. My life just turned completely upside down, really. That was when I stopped working. My son had left home. My long-term relationship broke down. I moved out to a little bungalow in the middle of nowhere. I had my autism diagnosis. There was just so many things. And that was when I realised that I really needed something for myself, something to give me structure and purpose again, something to help keep me feeling grounded, but also actually something that made me feel helpful again, because I had a lot of my self-esteem was wrapped up in my career of being a mental health nurse. And I think when I stopped that, I thought I was just going to feel a lot better immediately, because I was very burnt out. But actually, it was like I'd lost a big part of myself. And so to have my channel and to do readings and to just discuss my own issues and my own thoughts and get feedback from other people that it resonates and that it's helpful, I think has been really healing for me. I like, I'm a Virgo. I like to be helpful. So, yeah. I is for intuition. How do you connect with and trust your intuition? Well, I'm an INFJ. I don't know if you know about the Myers-Briggs and the personality types. A lot of these personality types came from Carl Jung's theories also. So I'm an introvert, intuitive, feeler and judger. That's the INFJ bit. So my intuition has always been highly present in me. I just didn't always listen to it. I think they say about INFJs that they're the most logical of all the feeler types. And there is a big part of me that is extremely logical and is an overthinker. I'm very analytical. I like to pick things apart and really work out and understand all the various dynamics of things. And I was very good at that as a nurse. People could talk to me and I'd know all the right questions to ask. And I could be a bit of a dog with a bone, and quite relentless about finding out, getting to the root of things. So, and I suffer with a lot of anxiety also. So you can imagine my overthinking is just ridiculous. So yeah, it's taken me a long time actually to be able to work out what is my intuition and what are my thought processes, and to have confidence in that, because as Simon said again, that first initial instinct, that thought, that intuition is generally, 99.9% of the time the correct thing. And then we go and spoil it by overthinking it and talking ourselves out of things. So my intuition, I've learnt to recognise, is a feeling in my body. Often it can be a tingle in my fingers. It can be like a feeling of butterflies, I think, in my stomach sometimes, or just something that, even though I'm trying to rationalise it and overthink it, it will keep coming back. I'll start to dream about it. And that really is when I know, come on, Julia, you need to listen to this, and if I don't, to my cost, things will start to unravel quite quickly. So, where are we up to? J. So journey, describe my tarot or spiritual journey so far. Well, if I was given my first deck when I was 17, I'm now coming up for 58. So it's been 40 years. When I was working and my son was little, and I also brought up my ex's two boys for a lot of years as well. And I think throughout all of that, there just wasn't the time, the bandwidth, the peace and quiet, the space. There just wasn't any of those things a lot of the time for me to really indulge my passion for tarot, and to be able to like have that space to self-reflect and listen to myself, which is something that is really very important. When towards the end of my career, I was lucky enough to have a manager who was very interested in my tarot practice and my love of tarot cards, and she allowed me to have a few clients that were also interested in tarot cards and esoteric things, to practice those things and work with those things. I mean, I'd always done a bit of hypnotherapy and mindfulness, and I'd always tried to incorporate some of my spiritual beliefs into my nursing. You know, I tried to teach people about meditation and mindfulness and some practices and theories around Carl Jung and dream interpretation. But when I was allowed to use tarot cards, and particularly archetype cards, I found them so helpful with people with personality disorders, particularly because people often will label themselves, or they've been labelled as something, and that is often negative. And you know, just to get a diagnosis of a personality disorder is a really big thing and is perceived by society quite negatively. You know, I think most people, if they think about personality disorders, might think about people who self-harm or are suicidal or destructive or attention seeking, or, you know, any number of things. But, you know, as with everybody, that's only part of them. And I think through the use of archetypes, I really did help some people to understand that they were many faceted, and that if they could focus on some of the more positive things, maybe some of the more negative things wouldn't have such an impact on their life. And as their confidence grew, they started to become healthier people, and I loved that. So I started to incorporate a lot of these things. Yeah, I absolutely loved that. So I also, for a very short time, I think for maybe 6 months or so, when I was a lot younger, I worked on Cassandra for a bit of extra cash. And I'm surprised I lasted 6 months, actually. It was horrific. You know, having people come on just to ask questions like, you know, does my boyfriend want me back? Or will I have a baby this year? You know, things like that. It was just, and they only want to pay you for 2 minutes or 5 minutes of your time as well. And if any of you have listened to my tarot readings, you'll know that I'm not very good at 2 minutes or 5 minutes. You know, most of my readings take half an hour. So it was not good. It didn't suit me. So K is knowledge. How do you learn or deepen your understanding of tarot? Well, just by doing it. You know, I'm always a great believer that most people learn things by doing, you know, not necessarily by reading. You learn a certain amount by reading, you learn a certain amount by watching other people, But I think more than anything, you need to just be doing. You need a regular practice. And I find that my own practice for myself is also not quite enough to keep me learning. Which is hence why I started my second channel. I had been doing some readings on, you know, highly sensitive tarot, but I wanted something that was dedicated to readings, because it's through doing those collective readings that I'm using different decks each time as well. I found really, really helpful. I found it's accelerated my learning quite quickly just doing that. I think, you know, we have all of these decks, but quite often we just reach for the same ones because we feel them and they're familiar and we know, we have confidence in them and their message. But I think it's really important to read with different decks as often as you can, and just read for yourself, read for other people, listen to other people when they're talking about their tarot cards. I don't really read sort of dedicated tarot books particularly anymore. This is partly because I'm not being arrogant here at all, because I'm really not, but they often don't have that much to teach me anymore, unless they're a book about something very specific. But general tarot is not that interesting to me anymore. And also my attention span is that of a gnat these days, really. And sometimes I'll just fall asleep if I'm reading. Other times I'll find that I've read a sentence and then my brain's got distracted and I can't remember what I've read. It's quite a sadness to me, actually, because you'll see behind me I've got a lot of books, and I've got books everywhere around my bungalow. I've got bookshelves everywhere, and it's rare that my brain is calm enough and focused enough for me to read a book from start to finish anymore. So I suppose if I use books, they're more like workbooks these days. I'll read a little bit and do something with it. I find I don't need big books that come with tarot decks either, like in the shadows we cast. This is the book, and there's this much on each card, but what she has packed into there is amazing, and it's more than enough, actually, more than enough. I'm really, really enjoying the guidebook with that, but I don't always look at guidebooks. I do learn a lot from other people. There's a channel, what's she called? Soul Reflections? I can't remember. Her name is Gemma, but I'll try and remember to link her in the description box. But she does some amazing videos, like really, the Soul Files. She does some really, really deep dives, or she has done recently. And when she used to read on her channel, I used to watch her a lot, and I learned a lot from her. L is for lessons. A powerful lesson tarot has taught me. To trust myself, to listen to myself, to trust my intuitions. Sometimes when I'm reading cards, I'll say something that I'll think, well, that's weird, you know, nobody's going to get that. That's not going to resonate for anybody. But it does. It often really does. And I've done, personal one-to-one readings for people where I've seen something, or I've heard in my mind something, and I've said it thinking they're going to laugh at me, or they're going to think, what is she on about? But they haven't. They've gone, wow, how did you get that? Where did that come from? And so I've learnt to listen to those things. when reading for other people particularly, but for myself, I think the most powerful lesson that tarot has taught me has been the card, the Two of Swords, which over my lifetime I found that I can get very stuck and avoid making decisions. You know, I will live with the discomfort of something for a very, very long time, too long, before I'll actually make a decision to change it, end it, move on, do something different. And that was how I broke really in 2020, was because I'd been avoiding myself. I'd been avoiding my own self-care, my own needs. I'd been avoiding my intuitions, my little voice. I'd been avoiding all of those things and just sitting there trying to keep everything together for so long. And I have not forgotten that, and I still remember that, and that's been a huge lesson. M, myth or misconception. A common myth to debunk about tarot. Well, I think Simon said this actually, but this is what I was thinking when I was watching his video, was that, you know, don't let anybody tell you what's right or wrong about reading your cards or about tarot. It's deeply personal. You know, we can all see different things. I've got a good friend who watches my tarot videos, and quite often he will say, I didn't read it that way. But, you know, that's fine. That's good. We're all different. Our experience of life is different. So obviously we're going to read the cards differently, aren't we? We're going to see different things in them. You know, what's uncomfortable for me might not be for somebody else. You know, that kind of thing. We're all having a different experience of life, aren't we? N, now, what is my current focus in my practice or my life? Well, I'm very much enjoying reading with more and more of my decks. I'm trying to be more intentional with what I'm buying. The low buy, no buy year has... it's still in my mind, but you'll see in my video reflections of March, I've bought so many decks. I'm not giving myself a hard time about it because they're beautiful, all of them, and I'm really, really happy with them. But I'm trying to be much, much more intentional, less impulsive, and trying to actually put some structure into my year so that I do get round to all these decks and use them. I don't like the thought of them sitting on my shelves and not being used. I already feel bad enough about my books. I keep all these beautiful books, and a lot of the time I don't have the focus or the energy to read them, and I don't want my tarot cards to end up that way. So I'm enjoying reading more and more. And really, the focus of my life currently, I suppose, is to feel better, because this year, well, towards the end of last year, things were quite difficult in my life, and some of those things continue. I'm trying to cope with those things, trying to look after myself, trying to invest in myself again. This is something that comes and goes with me. You know, with fibromyalgia, I realised that I have to have certain structure, self-care routines. And sometimes I just get so unwell that I can't do them. And then I start giving myself a hard time, and you know how it is. Things unravel very quickly. So I'm trying to be loving and kind towards myself, trying to have self-care practices which involve my tarot cards, trying to keep up my little rituals. I follow the moon cycles. I quite often put water out under the full moon. just lots and lots of little bits and pieces, I suppose, really. But more than anything, my focus is just to feel content and to be happy with my lot, you know. Radical self-acceptance. O is for oracle. Do I use oracle cards? And if so, how? Well, yeah, I did an entire video on this the other day, a VR to Amy at Strength Reversed. She was asking about how people use their oracle cards. And I have some oracle decks that I don't ever use in readings. They've become altar cards because I love the artwork. Some of them I use as a card of the day. Some of them are like more working decks, so they will be ones that set the scene of a reading or wrap up a reading. But I don't have nearly as many oracle decks as I do tarot, maybe 1/3 to 2/3. And I don't just read oracle cards in a spread. I always use them with tarot cards if I'm going to use them. P is, what role does tarot play in my life's purpose? Well, I very strongly believe that my life is a process of self-actualization. I'm always towards that wholeness. I feel that tarot was meant to be in my life. I feel that my nursing was meant to be, the mental health nursing was meant to be. I feel that as a Virgo and an INFJ, I have a lot to offer other people, and I want to do that on my own terms these days. Where it's not feeling like a job, but something that I actually want to do and enjoy doing on my own terms. But I do feel that that has always been my life's purpose, to help and support and guide and soothe. And not in any kind of egoful or arrogant way either, because like I said, I very much, you know, I learned very early on in my mental health nursing that the most profound changes and the most powerful changes for people came about when they were able to answer their own questions. And so you learn to become very good at helping people follow the signs of their own lives, you know, without actually telling them what to do, suggesting things, offering suggestions, possibilities, different outlooks, different versions of things, asking good questions that help people get in touch with their own thoughts and feelings about their life and what they want. You know, like I said, I could read cards very intuitively at a very young age, and so I feel that, like, meeting this lady was meant to be. And obviously since I've retired, it's given me something really to continue to feel helpful with. I feel that that is my life's purpose. Q is a question. What is my favourite question to ask my cards? Well, I think often I like to just ask very simple questions like, what do I need to hear right now? What's the best outcome for my higher good? What do I need to know right now? I like to ask, for myself, I like to ask questions of, like, I'll lay 2 different piles of cards. One will be, if I do this, what might happen? If I do that, what might happen? And then I like to compare. So I do a lot of those kind of readings for myself. Rituals. R is for rituals. Do I have any rituals before or after readings? Well, always when I sit down at my table with my cards, I light a candle. I light my Palo Santo. I have this, you've probably all seen on my table, my messy little plate with my candle and my Palo Santo. Sometimes I ring a bell if I feel strongly that I need to clear the energy even more. Sometimes I'll go round my entire home and clear the energy. I sit down, I center myself, I take a few deep breaths just to clear my energy, and I start to shuffle and away I go. That's it really. I always ask the question out loud, not just in my head. I ask the question out loud as I'm shuffling. S is a spiritual tool. Besides tarot, what other spiritual tools do I use? Well, I've tried out over the years runes and charms and dice and bits and pieces, but pendulums, but they don't really do a great deal for me, really. So yeah, I don't think I really use anything else other than candles. I use a lot of candles, I suppose, in my spiritual practice. I use them for spell work, for setting intentions, to meditate on. I like to write things down and burn them to release them. I collect moon water, which I will drink. I give to the cat. I water my plants. Yeah, those kind of things, I guess, these days. T is for transformation. How has tarot transformed me? Well, it's just given me a voice, really, an expression for all of the complicated things that I feel. It's enabled me to be my true self, my authentic self, to trust in myself, to have confidence in myself, to feel like I'm part of something greater than myself. These days it's given me the opportunity to let my inner collector run free, although I do have issues with that, because like I said, I struggle to collect things that just sit and I don't use. So I suppose I'm not a true collector in that way. I like the things to have a purpose and a use, but I have over 200 decks, so I'm a collector, aren't I? But yeah, I think more than anything, it's given me a confidence in myself. It's given me a voice, an expression, a way to express myself, to make sense of the thoughts, feelings, sensations, intuitions, all of those things. We're up to you, aren't we, next? An unpopular opinion. An unpopular or unique opinion I have about tarot. Well, I think Simon touched upon this, and I think he said that he doesn't like to watch people read for others. And I may be wrong, but I think that's quite a common thing on TarotTube. So maybe my unpopular opinion is that I like to watch other people read. I find that I learn things through doing that. no matter who is reading for who, I'll always find there's a little bit of something in that reading that resonates for me. Because like I said, we're talking about archetypal energies and very common everyday energies. So things will often resonate. I feel, and I may be wrong, I feel that there's a lot of people on TarotTube that don't like or don't watch collective readings, whereas I like to watch them, and I also like to do them very much because, like I said, they're universal themes. I find them therapeutic for myself to do, and I get a lot of feedback from people that say that they resonate and they're helpful. So I don't see it as I'm intruding on anybody's personal reading if I'm watching these things, because I think, well, if somebody wants a personal reading, they will go and get one, and that will be personal and private. And you know, if what you wanted to discuss was that private, you wouldn't ask somebody on TarotTube to read for you, so, or not publicly anyway. And even if something really, really resonates for you in a collective reading, you don't need to write that down in the comments. You can keep that for yourself privately. So I kind of don't have any issues with these things. I'm quite an open person, and I think that there's value in watching and learning and listening and reading for other people all the time. Like I said, I don't know whether that's an unpopular opinion or not really. It's just my feeling that it might be. V is for values. What values are important to me as a reader? Well, honesty, authenticity, integrity, kindness, being therapeutic, being healing, not telling people what they want to hear, but telling them what I actually really see, genuinely. Like I said, being authentic, having some integrity about myself. Obviously, in a collective reading that's not for anyone in particular, I'm just going to sit down and read the cards like a story. And unless I get any kind of downloads or any kind of information that comes to me externally, I will just read the cards intuitively like a story. But if I'm reading for a person that's with me, I'm obviously going to take into account the things that they say, the questions that they ask, but I'm not going to sugarcoat things for people. I like to be honest and upfront, because I think that that's often what people need, really. You know, they need that mirror to be reflected back at them. They need the truth of that. So that's how people heal, you know, that's how people gain self-awareness. And even things that may be uncomfortable initially, they're generally the most powerful and important things that we need to know, aren't they? So W is for wisdom. A piece of wisdom I've gained through tarot. Well, I think quite simply that life is always unfolding, that you don't need to force anything, that you need to have faith and trust in the process of life. You know, like the Wheel of Fortune, it's always moving, it's always changing. You can't stop it. You can't force it in a certain direction. You just need to have faith and trust in that process, really. X is what makes my tarot practice uniquely mine. Well, just allowing myself to be me, not feeling like I've got to copy other people or keep up with other people or do everything that other people are doing. just bring my own unique blend of insights, my own lived experience, my own compassion for life and for people. I would like to think that I'm a very compassionate person. I have a great depth of feeling for people and for life. I always want the best for people. I want win-wins, if at all possible. So yeah, just by being me. By allowing myself to be me, I guess. Rather, not masking, not hiding. You know, for a lot of years, there was a fair bit of masking going on when I was trying to be something that I wasn't, just to keep up. But these days, you know, if I'm not well, if my brain is sluggish, if I've got brain fog, if my brain is doing its thing where I get names wrong all the time, that's something I do all the time. Who cares? I don't care anymore. It's me. How do you bring your authenticity, your authentic self into your practice? So how do I bring that authentic self into my practice? Well, my authentic self has come from my lived experience. It's partly who I am at my core, in my heart, my personality, but all of that has come from my lived experience, hasn't it? And I think my mental health background has shaped me a great deal. You know, like for instance, unless a person asks me specifically to read for them about their career, when I look at the cards, it never even occurs to me to think about such things. I'm always looking for the psychological side of that of the cards, the therapeutic side, the mental health. That's my background. That's my brain seems to be trained to spot those kind of patterns, and that's what I'm interested in. So that's my authentic self. And also my brain is neurodivergent. I may see things that other people don't. I miss things that other people don't. I can get very focused in on some things and completely miss other things. Like I said, I'm very big on fairness, on justice, on kindness, on compassion. And I try to incorporate all of those things into my practice. And Z, and I'm doing well, 58 minutes. Z is Zenith. What would my highest expression or goal in tarot or spirituality look like? Well, it's just more of the same that I've been saying, I think. I just want to continue to learn and share. Just to continue to learn and share, to help people find some clarity, help myself find clarity, to understand why people do things, their motivations, to be kind, to uplift people that may be feeling sad or unwell. I hope that by talking about my own issues sometimes that really helps. And I think my favourite thing ever about my channel is my channel in particular, but also in my life, you know, because I do read for other people, friends. I've got a neighbour that I read for. My favourite thing ever is when somebody tells me that something that I said really resonates for them and it helps them make a connection, or it's cathartic in some way. It helps them to release something that's been stuck or upsetting them, or it just, like I said, it just is a pivotal moment where they make a certain connection and it helps to change their life. That for me would be an absolute zenith of my practice, is to be able to do that, to help. So yeah, that's it. I think that's it. That's not too bad, is it? An hour for all of these questions. So I hope you enjoyed listening. Do say hello, because I love to hear from everybody. Have a go at this tag. It's really interesting. It would be great to hear other people's experience of their practice and what it means to them. Thank you to Simon, and I'm sending you all my love, and I will see you all again soon.